Assassin's Creed Shadows released this year by Ubisoft, and to me, this feels like the most emergency button title from Ubisoft, because I remember years ago when Assassin's Creed started getting popular, obviously a popular choice people would want would be an entry involving ninjas, because people freaking love ninjas. If we got a stealth genre, why not use ninjas for an entry? But also remember years ago, the idea that using ninjas was rejected because of the idea that it would be too obvious or too expected, so they would try their best to avoid going with it. So Assassin's Creed Shadows being based in Japan, to me, feels like the epitome of emergency, do the thing people asked for years ago, on top of also the addition of being able to play the samurai, which is also very cool to include. So the main premise is that Naoe, who's a shinobi and assassin, wants to essentially avenge what happened to her homeland, Iga, when Nobunaga's forces invaded and pretty much caused great devastation. Yasuke, on the other hand, is a samurai who works for Nobunaga, who wants to go after the daimyo who were plotting to go after Nobunaga and seize his power. There is a lot more going on, and there is a point where the two characters start working together, but that's more for you to say because I'm not going to more of the intricacies. What I will say is that it took a good while before the two characters really met up with each other, especially as it helps the fact that you can do a lot of side quest content, just get lost in it, which will then make it longer and longer until it feels like get to the point where the game truly begins. Not to say that you don't do stuff early on, but just feels like once you have the choice to swap between the two characters, that's when the game truly starts shining. One thing I do find weird, I know it's more of an Ubisoft thing, is the fact that aside from the main people you go after and target as the characters, you also have so many optional organizations to go after, so freaking many of them, to the point where I could just casually kill someone who is a VIP and not even realize it, or have an entire faction group have just accidentally raid their base and have their title cards start showing up one by one, and I immediately kill them in the same meeting. Like, there's a lot of side organizations you can go after in this game, and so many people, and it just feels very weird because they don't really put major emphasis on their devs only for the main plot characters. So for these side characters, you could just kill them and not even notice they're supposed to be an important figure or someone you were going after at all. Like, it is very weirdly handled. What I do like are the characters Naoe and Yasuke, including even certain side quests and main quest lines that are exclusive towards them, but also just love the interaction with them. And not gonna lie, some of the stuff with Yasuke they do gameplay wise feels like the epitome of someone was waiting to make certain jokes about staple stuff in Assassin's Creed franchise. So for Yasuke to not be an assassin and be a samurai, and him trying to do certain things that only an assassin character beforehand would do, feels like we're writing gags that someone probably thought up so many years ago when this franchise was new, and finally has the ability to implement them into a game.
I am fine. This is fine.
So that feels like a fun little dynamic, and they do have characters they can recruit, you can call in as allies for combat, so they do have interaction with other characters that they have separately from each other, and when they're together, it is pretty cool. Although there is this weird dynamic where sometimes the main plot, you'll be able to make a response either as Yasuke or as Naoe. They're both in the same cutscene, but you can choose who makes a response, and they both have their own different kind of responses and ideal they're going for in the response. But it just feels weird because you question, is there really much of a point to that? Like, I don't know what it really as to have that hunter aspect, especially since there are some targets that feel like they're designed more for one character to go after. Like, some feel like, oh, this is one for Yasuke to go after, but you can go after it that way you prefer, so you do have a lot of choice in this game. Another thing I find interesting is that there's a quote-unquote canon mode where the game will just automatically pick the canonical dialogue choices, so it just makes me feel like is it big enough of a difference for other choices, especially when most of your dialogue are just two choices, to really have a canonical mode? Like, I guess you want more streamlined experience, but it does feel weird to be like, hey, here's a mode where you can have the chronicle thing, or the character say something they wouldn't normally say, and it's like 2 different dialogue prompts, and it's like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of times I'm like, I don't know which one of them this character would say, really. So, it is a weird inclusion kind of thing. Also, another weird thing is, because my brother was playing the game with a Japanese voice track, he mentions how the Japanese voice track, the characters will use more informal terms with kind of characters with Japanese, and was surprised that the English voice track, they used the more appropriate terms when it came to being more formal characters. So he found that weird that the Japanese voice track feels like it's trying to go for more modern Japanese terms as opposed to terms that would properly fit the time period the game takes place in. Like I said, I'm not a big expert on that. That's just comments he mentioned, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Like, 'cause I know many people say, oh, the English dub is bad, play the Japanese dub, and that's like, oh, the Japanese dub has its own weird quirks when it comes to it. So I don't really think there's any real standout winner here. I will say, I do like the characters of Naoe, Yasuke, and also the side character Jinjiro in this game. Those 3 characters I like the most. But when it comes to this game's narrative, I just don't care for any of the villains in it or the villain factions, especially the side ones. Maybe the main ones, but the fact that they get the main focus, they're just so uninteresting. Like, I feel like out of all Assassin's Creed games, these villains of all really needed like those moments after death where the simulation would break down to give a moment for the protagonist and the villain to talk to each other, because there's just not much we to say about this villain group at all. I do find it interesting that there are some targets you go after, then you can spare or kill them, although let the title go, name Assassin's Creed. But it's an interesting choice with the fact that for the most part, these villains just kind of end. It's so weird because you have to do several missions or to build up to fight go after a target, but you don't really get much to know about them. Yeah, you have the codex entries, everything, but oh, the villains are just very weak in this game and just uninteresting. Like, I like Naoe, I like Yasuke, I think they're dynamic, but I feel like don't really have much to bounce off of when it comes to the actual villains. There is a group that Yasuke gets to face who he has the most to bounce off with, and it actually is done pretty damn well, but it is very short-lived, and once again, they're not the main big group you're going after, so it feels weird that all of this more better connection Yasuke has to a villain group is instead with this short-lived aspect group instead of the main people you're going after. I wish there was just more to it. I mean, the fact that both characters are going after some form of revenge quest, and yet it feels like they don't really do much with it. Like, it's used more as the setup, but not much else. And it's weird because there is one person you go after as Naoe, where you do this whole entire unique gameplay thing, and they need to learn about tea ceremonies, certificates, everything. And it's a very cool way of handling a mission, especially since she's a shinobi, and like she's doing this whole entire thing in the sky, let's get to our target. That is super cool. That's the fact that the game asks you to figure out who the target is. That is super cool, but that's like the only time in the whole game it does anything like that. The rest are, hey, go to this area and find out some people, has names of certain people. Now you have access to the big mission where you now raid their base and take them out. It's just so weirdly handled, and I just wish there was more to the villains. That one villain I do a tea ceremony for is the only one that really stands out for me. The rest are just pretty and just don't really do much at all for me when it comes to villains. They just feel uninteresting. I've seen some say that Naoe feels like a great quintessential Assassin's Creed protagonist, but she's just not in an Assassin's Creed game, if that makes any sense. So yeah, I just wish the villains had a way more going on. They're just so dull. And Naoe and Yasuke, their personality, their charm is what's really carrying the narrative for me. Now for the gameplay, with the gameplay structure being split up by the 2 characters. Naoe, being the assassin, has the more stealth approach, with Yasuke being the samurai, is more full frontal assault and pure combat. Despite Naoe being a stealth character, she is still competent at combat. Granted, she can't take nearly as many hits as Yasuke, so she's not super good at it, but if you are skilled enough, you can take out entire armies of people as Naoe. It'd just be pretty difficult. And Yasuke does have a stealth ability he can get, although even with it, it is still a very loud thing, so don't count on it as the idea that you can purely stealth as Yasuke. It ain't really happening, unless there are moments where the AI is very stupid, where I did have one moment where the AI just kept falling for the same trick over and over and over, and Yasuke managed to take out basically armies worth of people by pure stealth, and it just looked really goofy.
Struck down.
Anything out there? Who's there? What was that?
Now, despite Naoe being the stealth person, this game loves putting her in so many combat situations that it's just so weird. Like, so many times in this game, there'll be a mandatory fight as Naoe. Even fights that involve taking on groups of people, which was the thing she struggles with, and yet, for some reason, it just keeps happening. It's like, if she's a stealth character, why does she keep being put into complete combat situations? I don't get it. Like, there's no point in which Yasuke has to stealth, and thank God for that, because I can't imagine trying to do a pure stealth section as Yasuke. But it just feels weird that Naoe has so many combat sections to herself that she has to do, despite the fact that her emphasis is stealth. Even in dialogue, she'll emphasize the fact that she prefers more stealth routes. So why there's so many times where she has to get into a fight with a person or a group of people and you can't stealth your way out of it? Yasuke, when it comes to combat, is super great at it, and it's very fun to just go in and just blitz things. Even if I love the fact that Naoe has to open locked doors or come around them. Meanwhile, Yasuke can just barge right in them and even use that same barging ability on enemies. So there's that cool little aspect. Also, the little detail that when Yasuke does an assassination, he always has the enemy face him first, when he gets their attention first before assassinating them. Like the whole idea that he's not going to hit them from behind, so he wants them to look at him first before he kills them. So I like that little detail. The problem I have with Yasuke being full frontal assault is the fact that you see in the game, in bases, enemies can ring an alarm. If you don't stop it, they don't make more than 2 characters wanted in a region, which means any wandering Ronin will start trying to attack you. This is a problem. The main problem is, if the bell goes off, they'll start calling in Guardians, who are the most dangerous kind of enemies that even as Yasuke, you definitely want to be careful around. And this entire mechanic means that since Yasuke is more about bursting in, being loud as possible, it means way more often you'll probably have the enemies trying to ring the bell. If you stop them, Guardians come in, along with more reinforcements, meaning Yasuke may be off trying to fight entire armies by himself. Can he do it? Yeah, but it still feels weird that certain things like that you want to avoid can be more difficult to avoid since Yasuke is all about going in loud. Now for the more RPG aspects that I don't really like it's in this game. Like, not just the fact that you have equipment that, equipment, the stats, they gotta pay attention to abilities, and the abilities they got, and there's some equipment that, early on, I like their abilities so much, and I like the fact that you can upgrade your equipment to level up, so you don't need to swap out things you don't want to. You find a certain equipment you like, you can keep that for the entire game. That's one thing I found for Naoe, a piece of equipment that made it so whenever she assassinates someone, if someone else is close by, she just automatically throw a kunai at them. With most of the time, it being a one-shot, so if someone's about to spot me and ring the alarm, she just immediately takes them out. which is super cool. Granted, it also backfires because she may enough look kunai an enemy that she doesn't one-shot, so the enemy may just get alerted because now I decided to throw a freaking kunai at them like an idiot. One that I love for Yasuke that I found is one that makes it so unblockable attacks are now parryable, meaning I don't have to dodge as Yasuke, which is good because I don't feel like his dodge is as good as Naoe, on top of the fact that he's a bigger target than Naoe, so just be able to parry everything was super fun as Yasuke to have his ability, so it is cool so we can have to customize your playstyle. My main issue is more the fact that because of the RPG mechanics, so much your reward is going to be random equipment. Going for this, going for that, this, that. If you already find an armor you want to stick with, getting new equipment may not be worthwhile because, oh, loot legendary thing, and that's a worse ability than what I got. I'm not going to use it. So, it's kind of a problem because it's your main reward for going through bases. And to go through bases, you gotta find several samurai daimyo, then kill them, which can be annoying because of the fact that I swear some of them are just hidden and just hard to find. Then open the chest, and boom, your reward is equipment you probably don't care for. So, I wish the rewards were better than that when it came to equipment. I also like the fact that level ups. Your level up dictates what characters you can go against, because if an enemy is higher level, they'll be harder to take out. If they're too high of a level, they'll just flat out one-shot you, which can make combat very difficult. You can beat them, but like I said, you're at a big risk. My main issue is the fact that enemies too high level, you'll either only do major damage with assassination, or be unable to assassinate them at all, no matter what approach you take. And I hate that aspect because it basically makes Naoe useless in those situations, because that's her main thing, and using it for combat, you can, but if Yasuke's fighting someone who has a skull for a level and it one-shots him, what chance does Naoe have? So, you can stay and fight and keep trying, but it's gonna take a while for you to get it right. There is a skill tree system to get more abilities, whether it be passive abilities that are super cool, or access to more active abilities to use in combat. So there is that cool fact, but you need knowledge points in order to get later rank skills, and knowledge points means going around the world doing these same set activities over and over and over and over. And it's weird how one activity for Naoe is meditation at first would give you flashbacks as Naoe, which fleshed her character out more, and that was super cool, but it stops after like 4 times, but there's like so many meditation spots in the game, so now you're just doing it just for knowledge points. It just felt like I'm just stopping everything just to do some arbitrary death. Oh, gotta find some scrolls for knowledge points. Oh, gotta pray at all these shrines. Oh, gotta do this bow challenge as Yasuke. That freaking sucks, because I swear to God, the auto aim on the bow is very weird. I swear it does not activate if you're already holding the bow button, and sometimes maybe you just try to lock onto it, maybe your cursor, it still won't work, but it comes with a more Ubisoft known repetitive task all over the map in order to benefit your character, but it takes so long and can just become so tedious, and you probably get sick of it at some point. If you want better skills, you gotta get knowledge points. You gotta do it. I do like the fact that you do get mastery points just for killing daimyo. Not just for leveling up. Even killing high-ranked people will give you master points, which is super cool. Another thing I don't really like much is the size of the map, because this game's map is freaking huge, but so much of it is just freaking dense forest that make trying to get to places difficult, since a lot of places will be up hills, and there'll be hills with slopes so steep the characters can't climb up them, which makes it more annoying. And since Yasuke is a samurai and a shinobi, when it comes to trying to go up hills, he's got to struggle more because he's not a parkour person. He can do some light climbing and stuff, but nowhere near Naoe's skill, so some things require you to swap to Naoe. He's got to pause the game, swap to Naoe, then get the thing, then swap back to Yasuke when I play more as Yasuke and not Naoe, and stuff like that. It just feels like a whole bunch of stuff was not designed with Yasuke in mind in the slightest. It was designed purely with Naoe in mind, because only her ability of being better at parkour is what allows her to go to certain places. Also, her little rope that she can use to climb. So it can become tedious. I'm trying to play as Yasuke for a segment, get to a place where it's like, oh, I'm synchronized with this, and I can't because Yasuke can't climb it. So I gotta swap to Naoe in order to do it properly, and then swap back to Yasuke to continue playing. You also have the scout system, where you can use scouts on the map to basically narrow down the search for quest lines you got. Let's say the game will give you a quest that'll give you a hint to the location where the quest starts. You can then use a scout trying to find the reasonable area of where the quest will be, and then it will reveal the actual waypoint and give you the precise spot you need to be, which is super cool, but also feels like adding an extra step to something that feels like should need to be there. Like I don't know why we need an extra scout system in order to do this, especially the only other purpose for scouts is for you to loot freaking giant stockpiles from bases, which take up scouts in order to do, which also feels weird that I need scouts to do that because I'm not taking a stockpile what I'm at the base for. So it feels weird when I feel like I just skip out on bases because, oh, I don't have any followers on me, best to not bother doing it. And you can refill your followers, whether it be by spending money or helping random people around the world that just may have some issues, so like really happy for me, or waiting till the season passes to where your follower count will refill. But it feels weird that something that feels so basic, in this case, getting your precise waypoint and robbing a place is stuff required with followers rather than just basically you can just do with the character. One thing I will say we do like about combat is just how good the combat feels. See, many people say the combat is very simple, and on paper, yeah, it is, especially more so for Naoe, but at the fact that you parry perfectly but the character is vulnerable, hold a charge attack, and then do a powerful strike. But I love the fact that the charge can be done from any point in the combo, and it's always so fluid to do, which is super cool. Top of the fact that you can also block cancel your attacks, so you're never left wide open when you're trying to attack, and then don't have time to actually block someone, which is super cool. Look at the finicky aspect of trying to switch your target to someone to parry them properly, because sometimes they could be right behind you and you can't exactly parry them just by pressing the button to turn to them. So there is that bit of jankiness when it comes to the lock on and swapping lock on between enemies. But the way the combat feels with how the combos are so fluid into each other, you can cycle between light attacks to a heavy attack into a charge attack, is super cool. The fact that your active abilities that you use mid-combat have iframes for the wind-up is also very useful, especially when you're trying to find an enemy with a skull and you accidentally mess up and you're in a panic. So there is aspect of the combat. The combat is just super fluid. Like I said, you probably want to do it more so as Yasuke. Maybe with Naoe, the combat still feels super good to do. My last big gripe, which is combat related, is despite how good for the combat is, they don't really do much of anything with the major story encounters. Like, there are times where they do try to make the encounters more of a boss fight like aspect, but most part they just feel as basic as a regular enemy, and especially since your level matters more here than anything else, it can basically feel like you could just curb stomp people because you're high enough level. And there's this goofy aspect that's unintentionally goofy, where because the major story dialogue is happening in gameplay during the fight, you can just interrupt the enemy over and over and just not let them finish their sentence and then kill them, and it's like, what are you gonna say? Who knows?
You'll be dead.
So it's that weird aspect where they have the conversations mid-fight, but attacking them will have the character get interrupted. It's like, why not have the conversations keep going while the fight's going on? Especially since sometimes you can just go to stealth route as Naoe and just potentially one-shot people. So it feels weird how like I feel like I'm missing dialogue because I'm being too efficient at the game. Now for the text. I will note one thing. When you first boot this game, it actually boots up by having text-to-speech on by default, which is super cool that accessibility feature like that is on by default, so that way someone doesn't check it off later. Instead, you can turn it off, which is super cool at handling it. Having it done by default, although it did jump scare me because I didn't expect it. And you can customize a bit of the UI, including adding background shadows to the UI, but the one thing you can add the background shadows to is the game's text. You also can't alter the color of the text, so you're stuck with this white text. I do like how big it is, makes it very easy to read, but there comes a problem with the text because it's just plain white with no outline or anything, can easily get lost in things. Like literally soon after setting it up, it immediately got lost thanks to this load screen transition with this whole entire freaking digital escape that feels like they completely forgot about that. So there's many instances where the text can get lost because it's just plain white. I like how big it is, but I wish I could customize the color or give it an outline, give it a background, because I could give the UI the most absurdly freaking brutal backgrounds possible, but somehow the text itself I can't do that for, which I would prefer if, you know, the thing I need to read will be the thing that I could make stand out more. Next up are glitches and bugs, because my goodness, this game bugs out so many ways and ways I can't expect. It can be stuff such as the enemy just not fighting back, they just keep staring at me, I keep staring at them, and they stare at me, and we just stand there over and over for a good while before the enemy decides to actually fight back or do anything. It can be just miscellaneous bugs, the characters getting stuck on things. I had one with Yasuke where I was sliding down a hill, but a tree got in his way, and he couldn't slide to the left or the right, so he was stuck constantly in a loop, sliding from the hill, trying to slide down. I had moments where Naoe got stuck in places, and the game does teleport the character out if they're stuck in a place for like a few seconds, so there is that. For the Yasuke situation, he was stuck there at the fast travel somewhere else. So, stuff like that. There was also way more goofy ones, like one where Naoe for some reason just effing moon jumps for no reason while in combat, and I'm like, what you can do that, what, like stuff like that. And my favorite one being when I was fighting enemy as Yasuke in a base, I kicked the enemy off a cliff, only for the game to basically, what it felt like was someone holding their mouse on the enemy and just dragging them back to the base, and the enemy was stuck in the one animation, they weren't moving or anything, as they were awkwardly just being lifted around to get sent back to what it should be. And it's stuff like that. Like, this game is buggy, and I get it, Assassin's Creed game, also get it, it's an open world game, but it should not be to this degree where it just feels so goofy and ridiculous to the point I kept telling my friends, this is not a real game. I swear this game is not real. Overall, I do like Assassin's Creed Shadows. I like the new stuff it adds as well. My main issue is just the fact that a lot of the stuff that attracts from the game for me is issues I've had with Assassin's Creed since like the inception of the franchise, and it just feels weird that these issues that, listen, I know I've been playing Assassin's Creed, like I said, Black Flag was the last one I played. It was technically years after its release. But issues that just feel like it shouldn't be there, like how many of the same tasks in each region of the map being so overly big, but not being much to really do in it to really justify the big size. The follow stuff, the fact that you still have the follow this NPC around, but now you can hold the X button and automatically follow them. Give me an automatic follow button, and that changes the fact that I'm still doing a boring follow the mission. Granted, there ain't no telling missions, I'll give you that. There was no mission where I had to tell someone for info constantly, so thank goodness for that, but it just feels like a lot of issues that I would have said about earlier Assassin's Creed is somehow still here. So many entries fall removed, and to the point where the genre shifted from pure stealth to a stealth RPG. Like, stuff like that just feels so weird with this game that issues back then are still issues here. But I do like the character, I do like the combat, and how it's way better here than any Assassin's Creed I ever played. Those games' combat weren't exactly good, especially because it's just counter spam like Assassin's Creed 3 and 4, but here, Combat's real good and nice. Yes, it's simple. It's pretty simple, but there's stuff you can do with it that I really like, and it is enjoyable. But the stealth is also fun to do and kind of easy to exploit at times because it's super easy to just literally abuse one spot where you'll always be hit and just can't find you in a moment. They basically bring out of sight. They'll be like, okay, back to your position. You can just keep picking them off one by one over and over when they match the same spot. So there's stuff you can abuse with the stealth, but that also requires you to be high enough level, because like I said, if you're not high enough level, then Naoe can't even one-shot them with stealth, or even hurt them, period, with stealth. So there is stuff like that that feels like a clash. Feels like the stealth aspect and the RPG parts are clashing in places, but overall, it still works well. I just wish this was a better game. You know, I just wish things were better here, especially since, like I said, this feels like the emergency button, make ninja game now situation. So, that's what I gotta say. It's a good game. I like it. I just wish the fact that it did have issues that are issues I could have mentioned back from like the 2010s, you know? I just wish that also the story didn't feel like at places it didn't know what to end and then ended too abruptly, in my opinion. I just wish that with a more satisfying conclusion in places. I don't know what they're gonna do with that. If they're gonna do anything with that at all. But anyway, this is a fun game. It is a good game that had so much BS thrown upon it by freaking certain online assholes, but who gives a damn about them? Freaking, this is a super cool game. Also, final note, the optional romance you get in this game feel very awkward because I swear the characters were not really written to have romantic dialogue, so it feels 0 to 1,000 when you try to have them say something flirtatious to someone. I'm not gonna lie, it just feels weird seeing Naoe and Yasuke actually try to flirt with someone. Like, they feel so written to a certain degree with the main story and side content, but when it comes to romance, it's like, it feels like someone's putting a gun to their heads to say something flirtatious. Like, it feels weird. But hey, it's an option you can do. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. You can just not do a romance, but recruit the character for your cause. Hell, you can basically do a one-night stand. Hell, we could just not recruit them. We could just be like, you know what? I don't want you to join me. No thanks. You can't use that choice, which is a cool thing it does.